Welcome to DC Unseen, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. I'm your host, Katie Gerard. This show is all about unseen stories of the students, faculty, and staff members of Durham College. I'm starting off the series, and today we'll be talking about part 2 of my story. Last week's episode, on episode 1, I shared what my life was like when I found out that I had a serious brain condition called an arteriovenous malformation. Just to recap, as AVM is a condition where you do not have capillary beds from an artery to a vein. Shout out again to all my biology med students at Durham College. So the pressure of this causes a dangerous tangle of blood vessels, which could rupture and lead to serious consequences, such as paralysis or even death. But as I told you in grade 10, I underwent a radiation surgery to hopefully shrink the AVM and eventually get rid of it. This is a picture of me after the surgery. So as you can see, I was very much okay in that sense. It was pretty basic surgery, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, in grade 11, it was a pretty smooth year. I didn't worry too much about the AVM itself, and I went on with my day-to-day activities as usual. In March 2020, COVID struck the world. There wasn't much to do because everyone was in lockdown in their homes. I passed the time by doing online school classes, like everyone else. I baked a lot. I got pretty good at baking brownies and bread. And I made movies on iMovie. So that was fun. And to keep fit, my sister and I would run and ride our bikes along Soper Creek in Bowmanville. And we also did online yoga. Shout out to Les Mills on Good Life. But yeah, my two older sisters, Sophie and Jackie, were back from university because of the pandemic. So our family spent 5 months together, which was a long time for us to all be together. And we ate big dinners, we had fires in the backyard, and we played games. In retrospect, in what was to come, it was unknowingly really nice to have this time together. Welcome back to DC Unseen. I'm your host, Katie Gerard. So following my gamma knife surgery in 2019, I had regular appointments and MRIs at Sick Kids to check on the progress of the AVM, whether if it was shrinking or not. And once again, I didn't mind those appointments because they A, got me out of school, and B, I got the opportunity to eat stellar Sick Kids cafeteria food. And you might be thinking, why cafeteria food? Trust me, if you know, Sick Kids has the best cafeteria food out there. Top tier. But yeah, if you know the cafeteria, the food is great. But on July 15th, 2020, I went for my scheduled MRI at my previous MRIs in January. The neurosurgeons told me that the AVM was 1/10 of its size. So we were feeling very hopeful at this time, knowing that the AVM had shrunken a bit. So we were hopeful that meant we were on a good term. But that this whole situation would soon be in the past. But it was the summer before my grade 12 year, and I decided to go ahead of my classes and do online schools. So I did my online university English class in the summer. So I worked all summer. So my friend would rent out a cottage every year and asked me to go. So I was like really wanting to go. And I knew I had this surgery at the end of August. So I was like, this is my last chance to go out and have fun during the summer with my friend. So I know that I have the surgery coming up afterwards, but I'm just going to do it anyway because I'll be fine. But little did I know. And remember that blue Sick Kids journal that I showed you during the last episode? Well, I wrote in it for the last time a couple years ago on July 29th, 2020. And I'll read from it now. The date is July 29th, 2020. I entitled that journal entry as Uh-oh. So this is the journal. And it reads, the doctor called my dad today to inform them that they found a blister on my brain. He said they sent my brain scan to Harvard and London, England. That's crazy. I honestly could sense something was off. My dad was acting different, so I knew right away the doctor said something bad. I have to go into Sick Kids to get an angiogram, and they're going to try to glue the vein. If they can't, they're going to have to do open brain surgery. They haven't solidified a date yet, but they have said sometime in August. Good news is that the AVM is shrinking, but they found a blister has formed. It feels like I'm back at square one. I knew that I had this surgery coming up, but there wasn't a real sense of urgency. They would see me before September. So my friend rented a cottage in the summer, and I really wanted to go because I had worked so hard in the summer doing my English online. And I knew that I had the surgery coming up before I started grade 12, so I wanted to do one last hurrah before my surgery. And yeah, at the cottage we spent the days kayaking, making picnics, and taking them across the lake, paddleboarding. We had fires at night, and I was practicing the phone calls that I'd be making to the kids coming, the grade 9 students coming in to school. And yeah. And when I was first diagnosed with the AVM, the doctors were warning me about this thunderclap headache, the worst headache I would ever imagine. That would indicate I was having a brain bleed. At the cottage on August 6th, right before dinner, I was playing cards on the dock with my friend. And I had the worst headache in the world, that thunderclap headache that the doctors warned me about. On August 6th, my story from this point onward, for the next year or so, I can't remember too much because I was very ill at the time. So I rely on my family's recollection of the events that happened. My mom and dad were by my side the whole time, 24/7. Never left my bedside. And each day of my illness, my sister Jackie wrote in a journal every day about the days that I was sick in hospital. That was a way of her to try to help her cope through my illness because she didn't have much other to do, so she would write her thoughts and worries in the journal to kind of put her worries away. Not worries away, but aside so she can focus on school because she still had her undergrad that year progressing. So she took over where I left off on July 29th with my journal entitled Uh-oh. Here's her first journal. Her first entry was written on August 6th, and she inscribed the journal, and I will read it to you now. So here it is. Solely dedicated to my experiences and feelings regarding Katie Gerard's AVM. Written for my incredible little sister. I look forward to the day you get to read this book. Book 1. So I actually asked her if I could interview her and ask her about the events that happened prior to the bleed, or around the bleed, I guess. So I asked her to read her first journal entry of this journal. So here is the MP3 of the interview. Jackie Gerard. Hi, this is my big sister Jackie.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me. I thought I'd share some of my journal entries that I wrote. And I wrote every day that you're in the hospital as a form of therapy for myself to get out my thoughts and feelings, but also to preserve a memory of your time at the hospital. So here I have a dedication this journal was written for my incredible little sister, and I look forward to the day you get to read this. And thankfully, we are at the day that you get to read this. So it was Thursday, August 6, 2020, at 6:30 p.m. My family was gathered around the kitchen table after a great day of golfing, with me, my mom, and my dad. My mom talked about getting Katie a necklace for what she would endeavor on the coming Tuesday, as she was scheduled to have a brain surgery. Tuesday, August 11th, was supposed to be the day of Katie's surgery. Katie was at a cottage with a friend of hers. She would come home the next day, on the Friday. As I was saying, my family just finished dinner. My sister Sophie went to her room, Dad was on the couch, and Mum and I were sitting on the table having a conversation about a TV show. This was us. My mom had been hovering over the phone in case Katie were to call with a problem. Then, sure enough, the phone rang. A silence grew over us. Mom answered the phone on speaker. "Hi, how's it going?" We then heard, "Hi, Bridget. Katie has a headache for about 2 minutes now. She's really spooked out about it and stressing out. We are telling her to try and calm down, and she wanted to talk to you." This was the phone call we did not want to hear. While we were eating dinner, Katie and her friend were out on the dock in a lake playing cards. When they were called for their dinner, Katie stood up and her head started to hurt. The call came shortly after. We could hear her crying in the background of the call. Katie was scared. Conversations between Mom and Katie's friend's mom went on for a few minutes before she passed the phone to Katie, and we heard those daunting words that will forever haunt us. "Mom, I'm scared. I have never felt like this before." Right away, our hearts dropped to the floor. Mom immediately told Katie's friend's mom to call 911. While on the phone with us, her husband called 911 and Mom walked him through what to say. It was a jumble of a conversation. All I remember is the progression of, "She is unconscious. Ambulance is 30 minutes away. She is seizing. She is vomiting. Her pulse is good, but she is still unconscious." After a while, I took the phone from Mom, who was singing a song to Katie to try to calm her down. We were crying. Mom then was juggling the phone between sick kids and Barry's Bay Hospital. The whole family is in shock. Our little baby sister is bleeding out. Once paramedics got to the scene, we felt relieved. Katie's friend's mom went in the ambulance with Katie, giving us updates via texts. We lived for those texts. Our hearts were beating a mile a minute every time we got one. Our hearts would drop, and we would leap over to see what it said. A little story I did not find out about until later was that the paramedics contemplated cutting Katie's sweater as they might have needed access to her chest. While unconscious, Katie waves her hand, and in an effort to keep her sweater in one piece, it was Katie's favorite thrift store sweater that I myself gave her. Needless to say, they did not cut the sweater. By the time she got to the hospital, it was around 8 p.m. The air ambulance was to be at Barry's Bay Hospital at 9 p.m. That hospital didn't even have a CT scanner. They attempted to intubate her. When they finally did it, and they were ready to go, it was 10:30 p.m. Mom, Dad, and I were on our way to Sick Kids. Sophie stayed home with the dogs. We got to Sick Kids around 11 p.m. We patiently waited for the helicopter to get to the hospital. While waiting, my grandmother, my aunt, and my cousins greeted us. They came just in time to see the helicopter land on the building. We were all so happy to see it land. Once it landed at around 11:30 p.m., Mom and Dad went into the hospital. Because of COVID-19, only 2 people were allowed per patient. That left the rest of the family, including me, outside. We waited outside Sick Kids until we heard Katie was going into the CT scan. At that point, we made our way home. We dropped my cousin and aunts off and then proceeded to go to my grandmother's place. I spent the night there. I prayed, I cried, and I cried. That night seemed like the longest, most terrifying night of my life. I was waiting to see if my best friend in the world, my little sister, was going to live. I prayed that night so hard that I had marks on my hands from clutching the rosary so hard.
That sweater that I talked about in the that the paramedics were cutting off. This is the sweater that they were going to cut off that I saved. So I asked my mom to also share what happened the night when I arrived at Sick Kids via Air Orange. So this is the interview that I interviewed my mom with. What happened the night of my brain bleed?
Well, when your dad and I got to Sick Kids, we waited outside and we saw the helicopter fly overhead and land on the landing pad. Your dad and I ran into Sick Kids and they told us to wait because you hadn't been unloaded from the ambulance yet. So we waited outside a little bit. And then your friend's mom, who had accompanied you on the Air Orange flight, met us. And we were brought into the critical care room where the team was prepping you for emergency surgery. So we met some neurosurgeons that night. When we actually got to see you, it was on the second floor of Sick Kids in the hallway as you were being wheeled to the operating room at Sick Kids, and you were on life support, but you looked so beautiful and you would never know that anything was wrong.
And then what happened when I went in the operating room?
Your dad and I waited in the critical care waiting room. We prayed, we were crying, we were waiting, and I think it was around midnight by the time you went in for surgery. And a number of hours later, neurosurgeons came out and told us that their initial part of the surgery hadn't worked to stop the bleeding, so they needed to keep going. And finally, by the morning, the neurosurgeon came out and told us that you were in critical condition, but you were stable.
For me, how did the next few days look like?
Well, you were in critical care. You were in a medically induced coma, and it was just frightening. Obviously, our beautiful child being on life support. Dad and I stayed with you day and night, and meeting regularly with the neurosurgeons, and just hoping and praying that you'd be able to come out of the coma. When you did come out of the coma, so they lifted the sedation, we weren't sure what shape you'd be in, if you'd even know who you were, or if you'd have your language, or anything. When you open your eyes, Dad and I were looking at you in awe, and you said to your dad, "Stop being weird." So, like you whispered it, barely a whisper. So we knew you were there. And then miraculously, during the pandemic, you had loved Hamilton. Hamilton came out on Disney Plus, and we had watched it, and you really enjoyed that musical. You were actually able to sing some of the words to the initial song of Hamilton. So we knew that you were there. We were so relieved. Even though we knew you weren't out of the woods, we knew that our daughter, Katie, was still with us, and that although recovery was going to be long, and we knew that, we had hope. We were so elated, and it was a miracle, all of the work of the doctors at the hospital for sick children.
Well, that's the end of our show today. As you know, my story thankfully does not end there. I'll have to share more in the future episode, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Or, I guess next week's reading week, so the following week after that. But before we go, here's a TikTok that my sister made at the time. and I remember to always look on the bright side of life, as Monty Python says. Take care.